Welcome back, csc200, to part 2 of our EX4 and our introduction to PHP. And what we did the first time around was just kind of connect to our database or connect to our server. Now we're going to connect to a database, and the database we're going to connect to is going to be our world database. Let me just click on the world database here. And also just be aware we have our table of city, country, and country language. We're going to connect eventually and take some data out of the country table. But just for now, we want to make sure we can connect to the world database. So we're going to go back and we're just going to add kind of a new element here, or a new variable, and we'll call it DB name, and we'll use the $ up here, and we'll just call it DB name, and we'll say equals, and it's world, because that should be the name of the database, and this should be in quotes as a string. And then what we could do here, instead of just connected to the server, we already know we could connect to the server. We're going to say database. We're just going to change this and say database, and then we're going to call this DB name. So we know we're connecting to the database, and it should say world here when we connect, if everything's connecting okay. So we're just adding a new connection here. But one thing we have to make sure that the fact that we're adding a new variable here, we have to add this variable here as well. So we're going to put a comma and just put a $ and put DB name. So that'll be one of the other kind of arguments or variables that we'll be using here when we connect. And I'll do file save. And if this page is still open, I'm just going to refresh it. And it says connected successfully to database world. Now we don't have quotes on it or anything, but that's fine. That's fine for now. And we could probably get rid of this stuff in here too. We don't need this right now. We may put something else in there, but we don't need that. So our PHP is the only thing kind of writing to that page right now, other than the title of the page. So we're connecting to our database. We connected to world, okay. So that's fine. Now one thing we want to do here is we actually want to connect to our country database. And I just want to point out a couple things here, because we're going to need to know this, because we're going to need to know column names exactly as they are. And I think we're only going to use name and continent, because we're just going to find all the countries that are part of the North American continent. So the continent is North America, and the name will be whatever country names come up. So, but notice that when we use those columns, they're going to be a capital N and a capital C when we do that. So what we're going to do is we're going to write another PHP script, and we're going to put it right in the middle of our page, and we're going to do that to connect. Now, again, you may say, well, where are we going to find that? Well, we're going to go to PHP, and we're going to go, you could scroll all the way down. If you go to PHP and scroll all the way down to mySQL database, now the first time we went to connect, now we're going to go to select data. And you're going to scroll down, and again, skip over the object-oriented and go down to the procedural. Now, some of this will look familiar because we already had this part, and we even had the connection part, and we had the check connection. And what we're going to do is come down to this part here, and we're going to copy all this stuff here from the $ right through where it says close down here, and we're going to change it. So I'm just going to copy that. Now what we're going to do here is just paste it after here. Now it's all white right now, and the reason it's white is because it's not being read as PHP. That's because we need this. So I'll copy this and make sure that's in the beginning of this code. And I'll hit return. Now everything's nice and color-coded. Now you should still put the closing tag at the end, which is a question mark and a bracket like that. That kind of closes up the PHP. You should see your kind of opening and closing PHP that way. But everything should be color-coded. You'll get a lot of blue and lime green and everything in here. Now we're going to have to change this, and we're also going to make it look better too. Now some of this stuff is just making sure that you have your rows are greater than 1. You know, and then it's saying 0 results if you don't have rows greater than 1. So that's stuff that's already built in there, which is fine. But the main thing is it's running this, couple things it's running here. It's running this thing called SQL, and we're going to change that and just call it query, because just so we know we're doing a query. So we're just going to change that name to query, and it says select ID, first name, last name from my guest. We're going to change that because we're going to be selecting from our world database. So we're going to change that. And then also it says result, mySQLi query, and connect, we are using that because remember we're using this variable up there, so make sure that's the same as this one down here. And we just changed the name from SQL to query, so make sure you change that as well. So that's okay. So now that query is, it's making sure it's connected, and then it's going to run this query. So what query are we going to run? Well, I'm not sure yet. Let's go to our database, and what we're going to do, and you could even try it out here. Now the idea is not to do both, but you could still try it out here. We're going to go to SQL, and we're in our table country. Make sure you're in your table country, and then go to SQL, and it already has something started here, and we're going to do this, and we're going to say select all from country where continent. You could double click on continent, and then you could just say equals, and I'll do a space equals, and then with just one quote I'll just put North America, and you have to spell it out just like that and finish it up with a quote, and I'll put a semicolon. And you could try out the query just to make sure it works, make sure you don't have any errors. So I'll hit go in PHP-myAdmin, and it's showing me that there's 37 total. It's showing rows of 0 through 29, the first 30 rows, but there's 37 total, which is fine. What you can do is actually just kind of, if you want to highlight this, you could actually highlight this, because this is the query we just ran, or you could go back to the query that we just used, but we're going to go here and use this. Now you don't need this limit 030. We're just going to copy this, and I'm going to go back to here, and I'll just kind of put it in here and paste it right inside those quotes. And if it's breaking on lines like that, just kind of backspace. You don't need that. And you could leave in these little kind of accents, I guess, that are there. I think they'll be fine. Now remember, there are double quotes that wrap around completely what you have in there. So even though you have single quotes around North America, you want double quotes around your whole query. So make sure that's there. And I guess this is a, you know, I'm going to get rid of these. I don't know if they'll be a problem or not, but I'm going to get rid of those little accents. I don't know if they're going to give me a problem or not, but I'm going to get rid of them. And that's what we want as our query. You want all from all the countries where the continent is North America. So that's the first part of our query. Now we're going to go down and kind of edit how we're going to display the query. Now it does use another function down here where it's going to actually put them in rows and show us a result. So here we have our result of the connection and the query, and then this is how it displays the result. It's kind of an associative array. And we don't have to worry about any of that stuff right now. We just have to see if we can get the right information in here. So we're using the sample that they had, and we're going to change some things here. And you can see they're echoing strings, and then they're echoing rows. And here's a string, and here's a row. And we don't need as many, so we're just going to change the first one, and we're going to put name. Maybe we'll just do 2. That might be easier. So the first one we'll just put name, and this is just a name in the string, and you can see it has a space, and then it's using a dot, and then a row. This is the column name. And the column name is actually going to be name, because that's what they use as the column name in PHP-myAdmin. If you remember here, where they're using that name, continent. That's all we're going to use right now. We could use code, but we'll just use name and continent. So there's name, and then I'll get rid of one here, and I'll just put in continent, and we'll have to make sure these match up, because if we kind of mess up these things, things are going to show up white. So we're going to have first, we have the thing name. There's the string name, there's the row name, and I'm even going to kind of hit return here, and then on the next line we're just going to have continent. So I'm going to, in that little string there, and I'll put a space after it and finish off my quote, and then there's the dot, which is connecting the row. Now this thing isn't going to be last name, this one is going to be continent, and actually having continent doesn't really matter because we know they're all from North America. But continent, I think I have that spelled right. And each time it does that, it's putting a line break so that it makes another row, because this is basically the way one row is going to show up. Now this doesn't matter that we have a break here. This matters because it's actually putting an HTML line break in there, so it should put each element on a separate row. And I'm going to save what I have here, and I'll just check out and make sure everything looks okay. Make sure our variables are okay. Now this one is called row, and it's actually declaring that variable right there. It's saying row equals this associative array, and it's using result, which we have result already up here. So everything looks okay. Now this isn't going to look great when we do it, but this is just kind of the first part of making sure we can actually connect to a database and display it on a web page, because that's going to give us a lot of power of what we can do. So we're going to save this, and I think I saved it already. And then I'm going to go here, and I'm just going to refresh. And look at that. We have connected successfully to database world, and it has name. Now that's on its own line. If you want to break that, we'll have to fix that first. First thing we'll do is go up here, and after here I'm just going to put a dot, and then in quotes I'm going to put a paragraph. I could even put 2, so that it creates some space to that kind of connection line. And I'll save that and see what it looks like, and I'll just refresh it. And now you can see what it did. It kind of broke that down here, and it's saying name, Aruba, continent, North America. And what eventually we're going to do is kind of put these in table cells, because right now they're not showing up very nice, and I don't even know if we need that name and continent. I don't even like that stuff, so we could take that out. That's the way they had it on the sample, but we don't really need that, so we're going to take that out. So we're just going to echo row, and then we're going to echo row again, and we could probably just put it all on one row like that. And I like to put a space on either side of the period, and we're going to echo row, and I think that should be okay. I don't know if we're going to need a string before that or not, but I think that should be okay. So we have name, we have continent, we have row, and we have line breaks here, and we should probably also, in between here, we should probably put a dot, and then put, if we want some space in there, we could put a dot, and then in quotes, we could put double quotes there, and maybe we'll just do a non-breaking space, which is a, we could just do an NBSP semicolon, and I think there's an ampersand in front of it. We'll just do 2 of these. Non-breaking space, we'll just put them in there. That'll just create some separation between the name and the continent. And I'll do file save, and we'll refresh it. And we have a problem. Expecting OR, so we'll have to check that out, see what our problem is. And I see our problem right here. We don't have a separation there, so we need a dot. That's one of the problems we have. And we'll see if that's the problem. So I'll do a file save, and I'll go back, and I'll refresh, and now it looks okay. We have Aruba, North America, so they're all North America, so it almost doesn't make sense to really even have North America there. I don't, you know, we're able to do it, but it's not really necessary. So we could really even get rid of, I mean, we really just want to show the names, right? So we could really just put a heading that says, you know, countries from North America. So I think what we could do here is just do something like that. So we'll save it again, and we'll just refresh it, and that looks better. Now again, we're probably going to put this thing in a table. Now it's not telling us how many there are and all that kind of stuff, so we'll be able to do all the kind of things we can do with PHP-myAdmin. Once we understand how this code works, we're going to be able to do that right in PHP. Anything we could do with the SQL language, we could do with PHP, we just have to put it in quotes in here. So we'll be able to basically embed SQL statements in here, so that if we want to display the number, if we want to display, you know, different things about it, we can do that. So we'll have a lot of power to do this, but this is just the first step. So first step of this assignment, EX4, is basically connecting, making sure we can connect to our database that we have and that we created in PHP-myAdmin, making sure we connect to the server, then making sure we connect to the database, making sure we have all our kind of variables set up, making sure, you know, we can then display some information, which we just did. We just displayed one row right now, but that's not too bad for the first time of doing this. We're going to have a lot of power with PHP to take data from a database and display it on a web page, and I think that'll be a lot of fun. So we're going to stop here, and that'll be your end of EX4. As long as you could display that, as long as you could go here and you could display information from our database from a web page, you're in good shape for EX4.